Before we begin, I want to talk about some definitions to help clarify what this game is for the non-board game geeks. While there's no official definition for an automa, there's a consensus at board game geeks that it should represent an opponent who can win or lose, much as a human opponent would. In particular, the solo experience should not rely on beat your previous high score, unless beating your high score is also part of the base competitive experience. It is not to be a full simulation, but instead should interact with the game and the player enough to feel like an opponent, while streamlining out a lot of details. Not require the human to make choices on behalf of the automa that works against the human interests. A rogue-lite game is a subgenre of role-playing video games characterized by dungeon crawl through procedurally generated levels, turn-based gameplay, grid-based movement, and permanent death of the character. Roguelites, like Paths to Aegis, separate themselves from roguelites via a mechanism to carry over progress from one run or death to another. A deck building game is a card game or board game where construction of a deck is a main element of gameplay. It is similar to collectible card games that each player has their own deck. Let's talk about how I got here. The core philosophy of my game design: every action needs an equal counter. A few of my favorite board games include Dominion, Forbidden Island, King Domino. I really thought about these games and what made them so enjoyable to me compared to games like Monopoly, Settlers of Catan, and Risk, which are popular but not much enjoyable to me. These three games have too much reliance on randomness, and the randomness could continually bite you into a snowball effect, where at some point you have no chance to win. Everyone reaches that point in Monopoly where you feel like giving up because there's no hope. Dominion is a fantastic game because it is a deck building game. Even though you don't total scores until the end, you have an idea of who could be ahead and cater to your strategy. It's still random between what cards go into play and what you draw, but it feels fair. King Domino is the same, where you're mostly playing against yourself, but also trying to screw over others too. Forbidden Island is similar to Dominion, but tiles are changed over time. There are no die rolls. Rather, the cards that appear are randomized and can hurt or play in your favor. These games are also simple. The rules are easy to learn. The games are easy to set up. And one game I played had me spend 30 minutes just preparing it. I was not a fan of that, so I wanted to avoid that with this game. These games are also difficult to master, and that was my approach with this game. So my questions were: how do I make something easy to set up, easy to learn, but with randomization that equally helps and hurts? I knew from the beginning I wanted to randomize tiles. How I ended up with this design is quite complex, as I explored hexes and a variety of other options, but ultimately landed with these squares. I also knew I wanted to fight enemies, so at what point did we fight them? Was it when we entered a new tile? And how did those enemies act? How did they fight? Ultimately, I landed on the die roll, impacting both positively and negatively, moving forward or fighting. Enemies need some fighting mechanism, so I like the idea of popular games like Magic the Gathering, or a computer game called Slay the Spire. Again, Dominion inspired this game, so I wanted to make sure cards were implemented somehow and it made sense to use them for fighting. Though I struggled a long time how we would keep track of health and how the enemy fought the player. Did we have tokens? Too many pieces for setup. What about an app? No, I wanted to remove technology. What about health cards? Maybe. I felt this game was becoming overly dependent on cards. Then I remembered an RPG game called Expedition that uses life clips on the characters. I love this idea and added it to both enemies and characters. I wanted to give some enemies enough variety to be interesting. I landed on a mixture of things from Expedition and Magic the Gathering. Each enemy has something standard about them, but then each one has some special ability that can increase the difficulty. For example, the dragon seems easy to fight, except when you roll a 5. Or the vampire has 5 health and 1 attack, and you think, oh, that's easy. Then you roll a 3 and his health restores. You think, crap, this may not be as easy as I thought. Or you could destroy them in a couple of turns. Of course, this goes back to my core design. Every action needs an equal counter. This applies to enemies and characters. Every character has an enemy type they excel at, like the archer against flying enemies, or the paladin against beasts. There's a fairness balance at every level in the game. You have a lot of gold, you can lose it from a goblin or by death. You can use coins to buy more cards or level up. Did you gain a level? You have to fight more enemies, but you get more actions per turn. Need to move between locations quickly? You can use tunnels, but they may be too far or too close. Some characters are easier to start the game with, but become difficult later. Some characters aren't useful until later in the game. No matter what the randomness factor is, you always have a shot to face it. Rolled low, fight an enemy, but you earn coins. Low on health, draw and use a potion. Lost coins by drawing a goblin, chase him down and earn it back. Fighting a tough enemy, earn more gold. Did you die? Lose only half your coins, but keep your cards. Everything in this game can negatively impact you